Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and today we're going to go back to, well, the beginning of it was 1975 with the disappearance of the Lyon sisters in Maryland. And this case is kind of close to my heart because in 1975, I was actually living at home in Mclean, Virginia, which was just around the Beltway a wee bit. And I spent time at Wheaton Plaza, which is where they disappeared from. And I know I was at home at that time. I'd left and gone to college and probably dropped out of college and came back. I don't quite remember why I was there on that date. But I was, let's see, I probably was 21 at that point. And what I do remember was that my mother, who never much talked about news or politics or anything, but she did listen to the radio. I remember her face when they disappeared because their father was a radio man himself and was well known in the area. And I remember that look on her face, this horrified look that these two girls had gone missing out of a mall that I had been to. And I think what went through her head was that we're not safe. Our children are not safe. And that was a shock to her and to pretty much everybody in the community. So that's why I remember this from way back when. And also when this case got reopened as a cold case, one of the detectives wanted to bring me in to profile the case. And I don't know what happened. I think he talked it over with some other people in the department and they said, no, outsider. And they did not bring me in. So time went on. And then let me just read you this quick thing and then I'm going to welcome everybody. There was a special honor at the State House in Annapolis on Wednesday for the Montgomery County police officers who cracked a decades-old cold case. Detectives Dave Davis, let me show you Dave Davis just so I can give you his face. Okay, it should be this guy. There he is, Detective Dave Davis and Chris Humrock, I believe his name is pronounced Humrock. They were given a special commendation by Governor Larry Hogan. These were just two of the officers who got Lloyd Welch to confess to the murders of 12-year-old Sheila and 10-year-old Katherine Lyon. 12-year-old Sheila and 10-year-old Katherine Lyon, who vanished in Silver Spring. No, they didn't. In Wheaton. They went missing out of Wheaton Plaza, which is actually Wheaton. In 1975, Welch is serving a life sentence. All right, so I'm going to read you a little bit more about that. And I'm going to, this is the book that was written about the case. He's also in the documentary, by the way. This is Mark Bowden, and he's in this documentary done by Investigation Discovery, Who Killed the Lyon Sisters. And so you'll see the two detectives in there doing all these interviewing. You get a lot of videotape of the interviews with Lloyd Welch. And you also will run into this woman, Detective Katie Leggett. She did polygraphs and also interviews with him. And this book is the book written about the case. It's kind of tedious to get through, I must admit. Some people gave up on it because it's just a lot of the interviews over and over and over. And it's interesting because each interview things change, and you're going to see why it's important. You can see all my bent pages, and when I research stuff, you can see there's all kinds of underlines and check marks, and I put all kinds of crap all over it. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of this book so you can understand things more thoroughly than in the documentary, which was well done, but doesn't put in everything they need to put in. So I'm going to get to that. And before I start and welcome you, I want to say I've renamed this video. Originally, I was just pointing out how it was this is the oldest cold case in America, in the U.S., to be solved without a body and without DNA. And that's what my original title was. After I reviewed everything, I changed the title to The Lyon Sisters. Was Lloyd Lee Welch Jr. wrongfully convicted? And I'm going to say, for most of you who know I'm not fond of the Innocence Project, and most of the time when I put up videos about someone who's been declared innocent and now they're freed, and I'm like, yeah, not so much. I'm thinking the Innocence Project found some technicalities and got them off, and I find the evidence still points to them most of the time. The Innocence Project has never taken up Lloyd Lee Welch's case, but I think, and you're going to be so shocked, I think he was wrongfully convicted. Oh my God. And you're going to not, and a lot of people go, no, you got to be kidding me, Pat. This guy's the biggest scumbag, pedophile, psychopath ever. And I don't deny that. But was he wrongfully convicted? That's the question. So, buckle up. Because I don't do this kind of show that often where I'm like actually thinking you shouldn't have been convicted. Yeah. So anyway, I do want to welcome everybody who is in the chat room. And I also want to say, if you'd like to be in the chat room, please do click on the link below for Patreon, $5 a month. And you can come to 8 lives, 2 every week. I have 4 hangouts a month and 4 case files a month, case shows like this. And it helps the educational channel stay alive. If you don't want to do that, please at least subscribe to the channel, like the videos, check the playlist, click the bell for notifications. And you can always help the channel in other ways by clicking the little $ to contribute to keeping the channel going, or buying one of my books below. All right. So I do want to say, I've said hello to a lot of people in the chat room, but now I want to see if you have some comments that are like, what? Pat Brown said, what? Pat Brown thinks this guy couldn't. I mean, this guy? Are you kidding me, Pat? Okay, so I want to see what you have to say. Lenova, hi. I actually agree with you, even though he lied a lot. Interesting. All right. She said, it seems like he didn't know what he was talking about during the interviews. They paint him as a mastermind manipulator, but I don't see it. Interesting. Beth says, what? Pat throws in a plot twist already. Yeah. Lisa says, how's the cat? The cat is coming and going. That's my feral cat who comes and goes. He came in last night, gave me a look, ate my food, and left. That's what he does. Evil says, now we know to buckle our seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride if Pat's pushing someone in the Innocence Project direction. That it is pretty rare. This won't be the first case you thought someone was wrongfully convicted. This is true, but a good portion of the cases people bring to me, usually from the Innocence Project, majority of the time, I think they were correctly convicted and gotten out on technicalities. There were a couple people that the Innocence Project wouldn't touch that I thought were wrongfully convicted. That's true. It's interesting. Yeah, this is a point, Joe. I wonder if this is a case of people recognizing he's innocent, but nobody cares because he's a scumbag. Well, nobody cares he's in prison. I don't care that he's in prison for the rest of his life. Too bad, dude. But, and if this is an interesting case, in my opinion, most people think he's guilty. I mean, anybody coming here, anybody watch the documentary probably think this guy's guilty. And the detectives worked their little hearts out on this case. But I think what I see happening in this case is the same thing I see happening on the internet, where you get confirmation bias, you decide this might be the guy. And then from there on out, you go down rabbit holes and you start creating them, and you start manipulating, and you start suggesting, and you start thinking, oh, if he says this, and that means that. And so I see a lot of that in this case. So it's concerning to me because this case was, I mean, a huge amount of effort was put into the case. Unbelievable. Can't fault anybody for all the hard work, but I don't know what kind of lawyer he didn't have, but he confessed, but strangely confessed, and he was trying to get out of death penalty. So, yeah, really weird. I think he was involved, but unsure what his level of involvement was. Well, that's basically what they said. They didn't know what level he was involved. They came up to the point where they thought maybe he helped abduct the girls. But he said, I never raped or murdered anybody. So it's very, very, very gray area. All right, so let's get to it. All right, so let me tell you a little tiny bit about this case. Hold on, and I'll do Wikipedia because it's useful. Hold on a second. I'm trying to knock my. Okay, the murders of Katherine and Sheila Lyon were the abduction, sexual abuse, and the murder of two sisters. Okay, right there. I have to stop already. Nobody actually knows. They were abducted. That's the one thing we know. And I believe in facts and evidence, not guesswork or probablies. This to me is not proper. Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to change glasses. These are my now fashion glasses. Let me see. What do you think? The reason I'm having problems is these are my reading glasses and my eyes have changed recently. And now it's getting blurry when I put my reading glasses on because I don't need reading glasses. My distance vision is going. Go figure. So I bought these fashion glasses, but they're kind of big. But anyway, I can see better. And I also want to thank the person who sent me the wonderful, huge amount of wine to keep me going in these shows. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank another person for being extraordinarily generous and keeping this show going. Anyway, the murders of Katherine and Sheila Lyon were the abduction. That is true. They were abducted. Sexual abuse, we have no proof of that. Now, do I think sexual abuse happened? Yes. Is there proof? No. We have the only statement we have as to what happened is his statement. Oh, should I say statements? Many, many statements that change all the time. So it's his word, and he's a pathological liar. So do I believe they were sexually abused? Yes. I mean, it's just, generally speaking, somebody who kidnaps two girls out of a shopping center, probably a serial killer. So I'm going to say sexual abuse is reasonable, but not proven. And the murder. Well, the reason we could say murder is because, well, they never showed up again. So I would say that's the real reason we could say murder. But just so we're clear that we want to make sure that we point out facts as opposed to suppositions. All right. They were aged 10 and 12 who disappeared from a shopping center in Wheaton, Maryland on March 25th, 1975. And the good word here is disappeared. Nobody saw them outside of many of his claims be put into a vehicle by somebody. Only this guy. The rest of the people, what they saw was these girls were in the mall. There were a couple friends who actually saw them in the mall. And one friend saw them talking to a fellow. I'll get into who this guy is, and it's not him, but he was talking to a guy who had a microphone and was taping girls. And I'll tell you that in a minute. But that guy was running around the mall, and they were seen by a friend with this guy. Now that's important because a friend is a better witness than a non-friend, because you have to be very careful when people say, "Oh, I saw them." This is the kind of thing that drives me nuts. Now, a friend will know what they look like. They'll know, oh, those are the Lyon sisters. Somebody who doesn't know them. This is what drives me crazy. People say, oh, I saw them, that don't know them. They're in a very busy mall. Very busy mall. Now, this was in Wheaton, Maryland, back in 1975. I'm going to say the population there was heavily Caucasian. Okay? I would say if you walk through that mall, since kids were allowed to go to the mall with or without their parents, and there were 12 and 10, how many sisters, 12 and 10, or friends, 12 and 10, or maybe they could have been 11 and 9 or 13 and, who's going to know their age, right? That look similar to these girls. I'm going to say there's a whole bunch of kids in that mall who look similar to these girls. So unless you actually knew them, you wouldn't actually be able to say, oh, that was them. But there was one friend who saw them talking to this fellow. There was another friend that said he saw them after they left the mall on the street. Now, this is interesting. I don't know the validity of it, but it was a kid who knew them. But nobody saw them disappear except his story. So keep that in mind. It wasn't like they noticeably were pulled into a vehicle. We don't know whether they left the mall with somebody or whether they left the mall on their own. They just walked out of the mall and then something happened in the parking lot or on the street. We do not know this, so keep that in mind. Described as a crime which shattered the innocence of the suburbs of Maryland, that's accurate. The disappearance of Katherine and Sheila Lyon initiated one of the largest police investigations in the history of the Washington metropolitan area, although their fate would remain unknown for 38 years. And quite frankly, it still is unknown. And I'm going to get to that's why I think you have to question his conviction. It became a cold case. A reinvestigation of the sisters' disappearance in 2013 led detectives to charge a convicted child sex offender, and he was a child sex offender. No question. However, he was not charged with kidnapping. He was not charged with rape. He was not charged with abduction of a stranger child. His conviction was based on his girlfriend's daughter, who was, I think, 10, and he molested her in a way that he deserves a long prison term. I'm not going to get into the details. It wasn't rape, but it was something you don't do to a 10-year-old, shall we say. So he deserves to be in prison. And do I believe he has more crimes? Possibly. This guy was a massive drug user. He was married to a woman who supposedly she was involved in prostitution, possibly because he made her be involved in prostitution, because this is them together. And they had a bunch of kids who they didn't take care of. So both of them were total losers. He worked with carnivals, and actually some people thought he was involved in the Fort Worth trio disappearance in Austin, Texas, but he was there with a carnival, but it was a year after the crime in Texas of the 3 girls that were missing out of a mall. So could he have been the guy? We don't know. Could be, because he traveled around. Could he have committed lots of crimes? Could he be a serial killer? Absolutely. My objection to him, well, I have a lot of objections to him, everybody should, is not, I believe he is a lying, pathological psychopath and a sex predator. But how he was a sex predator is the question. What he said many, many times over in his police interviews was, look, I only ever messed with people that were related to me or were in my circle, my friend's circle. And that he pushed that. And he says, I never abducted anybody or, kidnapped anybody and raped and murdered them. I never did that. Now, he definitely could be lying on that, by the way. So I'm going to point out, before I go further, one thing about his background. Now, I found this on Scribd, which is scribd.com. And this was a document that was presented in the court of Virginia. And what I was interested in was his history. Now, this becomes a problem when you're going to court, and we see this happening a lot. Just to set up his background, he was only ever convicted of sexually molesting his girlfriend's daughter, who was also a piece of crap, the mother, not the daughter. And there were these incidents that were put into the documentation. And the problem I have with this is I don't know whether these incidents actually happened or whether these were things that were dug up by the prosecution because they were putting out feelers everywhere that he's been. Hey, did you ever have a problem with this dude? I always have issues with that kind of thing because people will jump on bandwagons. They will. And they may exaggerate what actually happened. Like, in other words, if they were drug users themselves, he's a big drug user and he was violent. There's no question about it. So if you get a woman who's also hanging with this dude and then she's like, oh yeah, he did this to me, I just don't know if it's true. Could be. But these earlier incidents were never reported to the police. As far as I can see, I don't see any evidence that they filed police reports. This all came out seemingly after he became a major suspect and the cold case thing. So let me just read you a couple of them, so you'll know he doesn't sound like a nice guy if he did these things. And if he did these things, it makes him a better suspect in this disappearance of these girls, because then he doesn't just mess with people he's in the circle of, he actually does harass other people and maybe do bad things to them. So he may be lying like a dog on that too. Okay. A woman testified that she will testify. These are will testifies. He never went to trial, mind you. He confessed and took a plea deal to get away from the death penalty in Virginia. And he was 60 years old when he did that. And so it's really hard to say whether he did that because he figured, screw it. He could have gotten parole at some point, but I guess he figured that he had been so harassed by the police by that time. I don't know if he just figured I'd be better. I got no place to go anyway, and I'm going to never get work. And I don't know, everything's going to be a crap anyway. So maybe I'll just confess to this. I can get a book out of it, because the guy loves attention. So hard to say, but so this never went to trial. They said these people will testify. In 1973, he did sexually assault her in Washington, D.C. She was 15 years old at the time. It is not said that she's a stranger. So I'm going to guess that's in his circle. This 1974-1975 incident, the Commonwealth intends to call, I think that's a brother, Danny Welch, who shared a father with the defendant but different mothers. In approximately 1974, he says that the defendant raped Helen Craver. That was his wife. So I don't know, in front of him, and then forced her to prostitute herself while the two were hitchhiking. If the brother says he raped his maybe girlfriend at the time, wife, I don't know what she was, in front of him, I'm saying the brother's a piece of crap too. Let's put it this way. The entire Welch family is really questionable. And I'll get into a lot of their weirdnesses. They are a family you don't want to get involved with, shall we say. So there's nobody really good in the family that I come across. So anyway, then the next one is another woman who says she will testify on August 30th, 1974. She met the defendant in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and attempted to force the victim to take her shirt off at knife point before she broke free and fled. All right, that's interesting. Again, we don't know if she's a stranger or that both of them were drinking heavily or doing drugs, and he's like, yeah, let's have some sex. And she said no, and he pulled out his knife and said, I'm going to take the blouse off you. I don't know. Doesn't say whether she said she met the defendant. Oh, yeah, let me look at that. She met the defendant. He didn't grab her off the street. She met the defendant. So what was his behavior shabby? Yes. But was it an abduction? Doesn't appear to be. All right, next one. He's got a lot of them by him. 1975 incident. She says that she got into the defendant's motor vehicle near Wheaton Plaza. Now, this is interesting because we're coming close to we're around the time of this happening, right? And they were kidnapped in, March, end of March. And this happened in the spring of 1975, whatever that means. She said she got into the defendant's motor vehicle near Wheaton Plaza with her friend, I'm not going to give the names, with her friend. Why were they getting into his vehicle? This is the next question we have. Didn't say they were abducted. They got into his vehicle. Sensing danger, she attempted to exit the vehicle. However, the door handles were inoperative. She was forced to roll down the windows to escape and avoid abduction. Now, that sounds pretty scary. So is it accurate? Did he have some kind of some kind of vehicle which he screwed up the insides too, so people couldn't get out, like Ted Bundy? Or did she just panic and not be able to operate the thing properly? And I don't know. I don't know where this happened. I don't know when this happened. I don't know what happened in the vehicle. I don't know if they've done drugs and then this happened. See, again, I just don't know, because the prosecution is looking to make sure he looks like a piece of garbage. It's not hard, but that's what they're trying to do. All right. Let's see. Another woman in 1975 in the spring. And the Wheaton Plaza thing is interesting because it means he was in the area to commit this crime. All right. She also got into the defendant's motor vehicle with another woman. What the heck are these women getting into this guy's vehicle for? Oh, no, sorry. I'm sorry. That's the wrong one. Sorry, it's the same one. I'm rereading. Okay. Let's move along to somewhere between February and April of 1975. She says when she was 12 years old, while at Wheaton Plaza with her family, the defendant approached her outside of a record store. The defendant told her he was an undercover police officer and that he just observed her brother steal a transistor radio from the record store. The defendant told her that she needed to come with him to the parking lot to discuss the issue and that he wasn't looking to get anyone in trouble. She told the defendant she needed to get her mom. He responded that it wasn't necessary and they could work things out between the two of them. She then called out for her brothers who came running, and she patted down her brother to check for stolen items. Well, that's interesting. She's a 12-year-old, and she thinks her brother's a crook. And then they turned around, and he was gone. Now, that story kind of rings true to me. I mean, I tend to lean towards some aspect of that story as a very good possibility, which would make him somebody who looks like he's attempting to abduct a 12-year-old child. That's the most interesting one so far. Let's see. Okay, another woman says she was raped at knife point in Tacoma Park, Maryland by him. The defendant indicated the victim was important for him to assault an inexperienced girl. Sorry, my phone is buzzing over here. But does she know it was him? That's another question. Were they together? Was she a friend of? Who is it? And why is this coming up now? Why wasn't it reported? So again, questionable that it was him, or that it actually happened the way she said. All right, let's see. Anything else here? Another woman does say she was employed at the Orange Bowl in 1975, and he was pretending to be a security guard and attempted to assault her. No more information on where he attempted to assault her at, like at the Orange Bowl. And another woman said he was abusive to her in Phoenix, Arizona. They moved there. They were living in a trailer park. And the defendant started a relationship with a 15-year-old who also lived in that trailer park. And she says that he and the 15-year-old were getting it on and pissed her off. So when she found out and was mad at them, he beat her. And the defendant and the young girl were caught breaking and entering into the United Methodist Church of Landis. The pastor of the church refused to press charges. Supposedly, she was pregnant at the time he was messing around with a 15-year-old, and he punched her in the stomach, and she went into premature labor. However, she did deliver the child, and he said he was going to kill her and take the baby from her. Lord, I mean, it kind of goes on like this. It goes on and on. So a lot of these, the majority of them are people he knew, like he said, who he's dealing with other people who are in drug abusers, a lot of drug abusers, and God knows what happened within that group. Would he take advantage of a young woman or a young girl who was in his sphere because the rest of the people in that same sphere were drug users and really didn't care? I'm going to say yes. He wasn't, first of all, he wasn't that old at the time. I mean, we're talking about he was fairly young himself. So, but is he a nice guy? No. Will he molest a child? Yes. Did he abduct these two? There's a couple incidents which make you think he could have done it. Okay. So I see why he is a suspect. Definitely. Absolutely 100% should be a suspect. Not an issue. All right. So that's some basics on him. Okay. So what happens is, let me tell you about these girls were, let me go back to, let me tell you about the person they thought it was. And this becomes an interesting issue. All right. The Wheaton Plaza Shopping Center was located approximately half a mile from the Lyon household. So it's a 10-minute walk. The sisters are believed to have intended to eat lunch at a popular pizza parlor within the shopping center, named the Orange Bowl. Both girls were seen by eyewitnesses talking with an unidentified middle-aged man close to the Orange Bowl less than an hour after they are believed to have arrived at the shopping center. Their older brother, Jay, later informed investigators he had seen his sister eating pizza together at the same eatery, although his sisters were alone. Jay's sighting of his sisters is believed to have occurred after the girls. So it wasn't even a friend. It was actually the brother. I didn't realize that. After the girls had spoken with a middle-aged individual. So they had already spoken with him, and now they were eating their pizza. Shortly after 2 p.m., Katherine and Sheila were seen walking home from the shopping center. This is often ignored because the whole concept is they were kidnapped out of the parking lot or right out of the shopping center. But they were seen walking home from the shopping center. This would prove to be the final verifiable account of the sisters' movements. And then they never arrived home. So not once in all of his many, which I'm going to go to, many confessions, did he ever say they were walking home and they were abducted. Never. He always said that they were taken out. Well, one of his stories is another story, but his major stories are that they were lured out of the shopping center and straight into a vehicle. All right, so they started searching for them. Now we get to the guy called the tape recorder man. All right, a neighborhood boy known to both sisters. Oh, see, there's a neighborhood boy too. Reported to police he had seen the girl seated on a bench outside of the Orange Bowl, speaking with an unidentified man at approximately 1 p.m. The man had been he was approximately 6 feet in height, well-groomed, conservatively dressed, aged between 50 and 60. He's a young boy, so maybe 30 and 40, and was carrying a briefcase. All right, he was carrying a briefcase. Hold on a sec. Where's my little picture on that? Hold on a second. I'm going. Is it? Oh, sorry about that. Hold on a second. Swear to God, I had that picture here. Oh, here we go. It's the missing pictures. Oh, it's starting already. Don't make it start already. I have a lot of pictures, so yes, this is what happens. This is the guy that. Oh yeah, here we go. All right, it's this way. So this guy was seen carrying this briefcase. And he was had a tape recorder inside of it. Okay. According to this witness, both the Lyon sisters and other children present spoke into the microphone the man was holding, believing their voices were to be broadcast live on a local radio station. The witness description of the man carrying a briefcase outside the eatery led authorities to view the unknown person as a prime suspect in the case. Oh, say, let's hold on a second. Let me take off the backdrop here, which is incorrect now. Go away, backdrop. Here. Yeah, let's do this one. This 1975, Wheaton Plaza and the girls. Those aren't the girls. That's just a representation. All right. So they thought he became the prime suspect. And this was the tape recorder man, a police sketch of him. Now, what's fascinating to me, ignore the guy on the right side, because that's the guy they eventually thought the guy on the right side was the tape recorder man. Okay. So what's interesting here is this tape recorder man has never come forward to say, I was a tape recorder man. Now, one thing is absolutely sure. Their voices were never on any radio shows. So what the hell was this dude doing? He's creepy as heck, okay? And he's very similar to a guy who says, hey, I'm a photographer. Don't you want to be in modeling? I'll take your photos. I'll get you into Hollywood. That has been used by I don't know how many serial killers to sucker girls into this kind of thing. This guy, the tape recorder man, was doing a similar thing, in my opinion. To me, he's a very good suspect because he's trying to lure girls to think they're going to be in showbiz of some sort. And this is one thing young girls will fall for. Believe you me. I hear from my 10-year-old granddaughter. She's like, oh, she's so YouTube and TikToky and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, oh, it'd be so cool. She's just excited about that because that's a world that's that world that most people don't get a chance to be in. Hollywood, movies, the news, whatever. And when modeling, so when girls get approached and are told they're attractive or they get great voices, they're going to be in radio, they're going to be what? It's something to lure them with. This guy's never come forward, and there's possibly two reasons. I'll point both of them out. One is he is the guy who committed the crime. He did abduct them, and if the girls were outside with him and then they went and got pizza, he said, "Hey, I'll be out here later." And then they came back out and he's driving by and he's like, hey, girls, I'm going to go down to the radio station now. Do you want to come? I can see that they could fall for that or he could just drag him in the car. Second reason is if he was doing that, even if he wasn't planning to abduct them, the last thing you want to do when your guy has been running around and you were seen with the girls who went missing is to go to the police and say, I'm tape recorder, man. Because they're going to go after you. They're 100% going to shred your life apart, your home apart. They're going to go after and look for evidence. You are going to destroy yourself, even if you're innocent. So guilty or innocent, that dude never came forward. But do I consider him an excellent suspect? I do. And we still don't know who that guy was. There are some suspicions of who he was. Okay. So let's find out who that would be. All right. Now, I want to go to, okay, I'm going to have to go to the book. So, in this book, 3 days after the crime is committed, the girls disappear. Then what happens is this guy appears. Good old Lloyd Welch shows up. That's what he looked like at the time. He got a little older and now he's bald. Okay, so that's Lloyd Welch. 3 days after, on April Fool's Day, he goes to the mall and tells a security guard that he knows he saw the girls being kidnapped. All right, so let me go to the book so I can help you understand this. All right. By the way, right after this happened, opportunists began to surface. There were extortionists that were trying to say, if you pay $10,000, we'll give the kids back, that kind of nonsense. So they had a lot. Then the psychic showed up. So the family was dealing with a lot of crap. So 3 days later, all right, what happened here? All right. In 1975, the first guy that inserted himself into the investigation, because people do that, they insert themselves, was this guy. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to show you the other picture of him. Hold on a second, that is him. I wanted to show you. The picture I can't find. Anyway, that's him. This was a picture taken of the guy and that time period. This will become very important in interviews with this guy. His guy's name was Meskey. All right, good old Meskey. He's a petty criminal. His name was Ray Meskey. He's a petty criminal and audacious pedophile. He inserted himself into the investigation in 1975. He called the Montgomery County Police twice with a suggestion they should offer immunity to the person who kidnapped the girls if he returned them. Then 2 weeks after the girls vanished, he came with a tip, right? He said he had seen the widely publicized suspect, the gray-haired man with a tape recorder, weeks before the Lyon sisters disappeared, trying to lure children into his car at another mall. He gave the police a detailed account. Then 2 years later, the same Ray Meskey shot and killed his wife and one of his sons. In prison for those crimes, he had talked a lot about the Lyon sisters, telling other inmates that he knew where the girls were buried. Police investigated these claims in 1982, partially excavating Meskey's old backyard and basement, and they found nothing. And they definitely went after Meskey. And this guy, he was a pet. He was a 100%. He was a much. I don't know. He might say he's even a nastier guy than good old Lloyd. He was a pretty vicious character, and he was also a murderer. And they went to his home. I think this is his home. Yeah, there we are. There's Ray Meskey's house, and they ripped that place apart, and he couldn't come up with physical evidence. But he inserted himself, Ray Meskey, into the investigation right after this happened, and said, looking for immunity and all that kind of stuff. Now, they gave up on him, okay? But they took another look at him in 2011, revisiting old witness interviews. Well, witnesses said that he was known to pick up young boys and girls for sex. He had done this once at Wheaton Plaza. Another said they had seen 2 little blonde girls in Meskey's basement. Now you see how many stories are out here, and this is why you have to be very careful of stories. One woman said that Meskey had raped her on 2 separate occasions when she was a teenager and had held sex parties at a suburban home. Men admitted that as boys had been intimidated by Meskey into engaging in sex acts. They learned that Meskey had been a part of a group of men who engaged in such activities, sometimes gathering at parties to share young victims. Okay, but all this stuff was just claims, okay? Now, they found he had some undeveloped land in Lancaster County, Virginia. They supervised a dig on his property looking for remains, and they didn't find anything. So they ran out of that. Now, this is where this dude comes in. This is Chris, this investigator who's now reopened the case. This is years and years later. So we have Detective Dave Davis and Chris Hamrock. Now, he was really into this Meskey guy. He thought it was the Meskey guy. And here's the problem. You get a guy who's a good suspect, and you get overly obsessed with thinking it is him. And you have to be careful that you don't try to force it to be him or to be him. Okay, so anyway, they couldn't get anything on Meskey. He's dead. He inserted himself in the investigation. He's a creepo. But did he do it? So then he looks in the files, and he comes across this file, which he didn't realize was there. He was doing cold case. So I don't know. Somebody apparently ruled him out early on. Now, this is what happened. There was a 6-page transcript of Lloyd Welch's April 1st, 1975 statement. This is 3 days after the crime. He was like, how could this be missed? All right. The witness, him, had told the detectives that the man who led the girls from the mall had walked with a little limp. That had to be Meskey. During a lifetime of run-ins with the law, he'd been caught in a home burglary and had been shot in the leg by police. And afterwards, he limped. I mean, it seems like he saw the guy that took the girls, right? He even knew about the limp. My God. Now, you see, this is where things get tricky. All right. But they gave him, it was suspiciously detailed and seemed like there was a teen at the time. So it's like, would he really notice all this stuff? All right. So anyway, they gave him a polygraph and he flunked it. And they said, you're lying. Police originally just thought, this dude's a liar, because what he's after is the reward money, right? So anyway, they were wondering if now Chris, the detective, is wondering, could he have worked together? In other words, did Lee Welch work with good old Meskey? All right. Was it a coincidence, or were they both trying to get the police to look in certain directions and whatever? All right. So so now what happened? Let's go to the next spot. All right. So the original statement. So I want to find his original statement. Hold on a second. It's a very long book. Okay. All right. Here's the original statement. I want you to hear this, because this is what he said 3 days after the crime. So Lloyd, when he was this Lloyd, all right, he tells him, Lloyd walks in, looks for a security guard. His plan was to tell his story to a mall cop and leave, but he had a poor sense of the situation. So the cop called the police, and he's like, oh, my stepmom was right. I shouldn't have gone and told anybody. Anyway, he goes to police headquarters and he gives a statement. And he said, okay, what did you see? He said, well, an older man was talking to 2 small girls. Just walk up and talk to them, and the girls wouldn't know exactly what to say. The guy's asking that kind of questions. And the girls looked pretty young, one about 12 and one about 10. I'm not sure how old they were because I didn't see their faces. And the police asked him if that guy the tape recorder man was working alone. And he said, yes. And then he said he saw the man pull out the tape recorder and show it to the girls, and he himself watched them for 5 or 10 minutes. And then he said he was sitting down. The reason he watched him because he was tired and he was sitting around. All right. So after that happened, I came through People's Drugstore, and he was standing there, and they were getting ready to cross the street. Me and my wife, now this time he claimed his wife was with him. Later he claims his wife wasn't with him. She came and got me, and we cut through the store, and we got into the car. He left before us and went west on University Avenue. And the car he got into was a red Camaro, and the girls had gotten in the back, and he was in the front. And there was a taillight was busted out. Now, he's saying that they were out by the street, which is interesting. Now, he gives a great detail of this car. I mean, huge details of the car. I'll let you just know this. Every time he gives a story, the kind of car has changed like 5 times. The color has changed, the style has changed, the make has changed, everything's changed on the car every time he tells a story. So he is a pathological liar. All right. So he's, let's see, what else did he say? Okay, so he was given the lie detector test and he flunked it. And then he was flustered. He admitted he made up everything about the car and about seeing the tape recorder man with the girls outside the mall. He said he told them nothing that anyone listening to news reports wouldn't know. And that probably is true. But he did describe the limp, and that's what interested the guy later. Now, we have another witness. That witness is this woman. Where is she? Okay, this woman. She pops in. Her name is Dee Danner. She said that she was at the mall, and she had seen Sheila at the mall, and she described a man who'd been following her and also staring at Danette and her friends. He was so obnoxious that one of the girls had taunted him. Why don't you take a picture? It'll last longer. She described the man as 18 or 19 years old, 5'11" to 6 foot, dark brown hair, and a shag medium mustache. A police artist even produced a sketch, which was in the growing file, and it looked a lot like Lloyd. Okay, now here's the sketch. Now, if you notice this, it's a guy with a thick mustache and some long hair. And here we have Lloyd, who has a thin mustache and long hair. And what happened later, the detectives absolutely think that she identified Lloyd. Now, the nose looks different. The mustache looks different. I'm going to say, again, let's go back to a mall. Teenage boys in a mall. How many are there? How many are in this mall Caucasian at the time? A lot of them. How many of them have brown hair? A lot of them. It's not unusual that there might have been a whole bunch of guys who looked similar to him at the mall. They're going through and tons of them. Now, so I can't take that witness as a fact that she saw him in the mall at the time that the girls were there. I don't know. So again, I don't have proof. Could he have been the guy? Yes. Also, even if he was the creepy dude in the mall, it doesn't mean he abducted them. It just means he's a creepy dude in the mall. But again, maybe it wasn't him. And his story changes so much, it's hard to say whether he was in the mall that day or he never was in the mall that day. Just saying, so you can understand the difficulties here. All right, so that was where everything stayed. Nothing happened 38 years later. Now the police go and interview him. All right. There in the book, there's massive. They interview this guy so many times. There's a lot of times they interview him. I mean, they really do. So this is like in the documentary session 1, and you can watch a documentary and see all the entire interviews, and it's fascinating. So now they're interviewing him, trying to figure out what happened. The problem is he changes his story all the time. And one of the things he does is they want to find out whether he was with Meskey, right? And here's what they do. And this drives me nuts. Okay, let me see if I can find it. Right, where is it? No, that's not it. Okay, hold on a second. My pictures are small again, so I gotta locate them. Shoot, where is it? Okay, not him. Where the heck is? Okay, just hang on a second while I flip through all my pictures. Crap. Okay, can't find it. Where is it? Okay. All right. Let me go look on my side pictures. Maybe it's there. Yeah, it better be there because it really interests me, this thing that happened. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's on the side. So they went and they showed him a picture of Meskey. And they said, this is what they said. This is a picture taken from the time period. And look what he responds. That's the guy right there. All right. That's the guy right there. Meskey, that's the guy I saw in the mall. Now, tell me what's wrong with this right now. There's 139 comments, so I can't get to them all, but I want to know, what do you think is wrong with that right there? And this is something that should never, ever have been done. Ah, thank you, Tim. Why didn't they show him a bank of various pictures? This is correct. Yep, they only showed him one photo. This is what I see happening in all of these interviews. They lead him many, many times into an answer. He doesn't have a lawyer with him. This guy is a prolific liar and a prolific storyteller and a prolific game player. And they put the picture in front of him and say, is that the dude? And he goes, yeah, that's the dude. Now they're all excited. Oh my God, he's identified the guy. This is horrific. This is not how it's worked. So, and then he starts telling stories. He says, yeah, that's the freaking guy. I had the car I was telling you about. The guy gave me a ride to my wife's girlfriend's house at the time, Helen. And then he starts changing statements. He said he was standing on a sidewalk miles from the Wheaton Plaza house, and this guy was putting two girls in the back of a car. I told him it didn't look right, the place. It was dark. The way the girls were acting and stuff, it wasn't right. And then they asked him about Wheaton Plaza, and he said, he'd never been there, right? And he didn't see the guy there. He'd never been there. Okay, so now, I mean, this just gets this story. That just constantly changes. I'm going to look for my next big thing on this. Okay. So now the detective, Chris, says he believed Meskey was not just some man who dropped Lloyd off at Helen's house. If he could get Lloyd to admit that he'd been one of the teenage boys Meskey abused and used, and he's saying that Meskey is getting teenage boys to lure girls. If he could get Lloyd to admit, then he'd make his case. Okay, this guy's a pathological liar. So what he's trying to do is force this guy to confess to something which he's not going to know is even true. All right. So that's what he does. So he said, apparently he said he was never molested by the guy. Yeah, I knew him, but he never came on to me. And then he says this, he goes, I'm telling you, he did not abuse me. What do you want me to say? He screwed me? I'd be sitting here lying. No, you're pushing me. And that is exactly what he was doing. No, I don't want you to lie. Yeah. So he's being pushed. He is. And that is not the way you do a proper interview because, first of all, he is a pathological liar. So if you push him into something, you're just going to maybe get another lie, which does not, if you're trying to make your case based on lies, that would be the way to do it. But if you're actually trying to get to the truth, you're not supposed to inspire them to lie you're not supposed to give them ideas about what they're supposed to say. Hey, did this guy abuse you? Did this guy molest you? I heard this guy supposedly picked up guys. You're starting to give them a story. And that's one of the things that is problematic. And then he's still stuck on this. The fact they were both in Wheaton Plaza that day was a coincidence too big to swallow. Were they both there in Wheaton? All right, anyway. And so goes on. And then he goes and says this thing, which is one of the things that'll stick later on. He asked him, if you were thinking what could have happened to the girls, he goes, well, I don't know. I guess the girls could have been raped and murdered, maybe burned. And they go, who says burned? And later on, they believe the girls were burned. And that's why this is one of the things that is part of the confession that makes him think he knows something. Does he? Or does he just have ideas that many people have ideas of how you get rid of a body? I don't know. Anyway, now he wants to nail it down. They need to firm up a connection between the two of them. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's see. Did he firm up the connection? No, he didn't. After hours of grilling, they failed to get that. All right. So he changed his story every time. He was now the guy says he changed his story again. He says he admitted to being with Meskey and kidnapping. So now Meskey was no longer just a man who'd given him a few rides. Now they hung out, smoked dope together. We took them to his house. He placed himself with the kidnappers. I went over to the house, and then he heard screams and he ran off. And it was supposedly this all happened in a basement. And this basement thing becomes important because he talks about the girls at some point and all these different stories ending up in a basement where they were raped. And he says he peeked in and they were wearing nothing. And two males were having sex with the girls, but not him. And he ran away. All right. let's see. Okay, so now they say they now had a case against Lloyd Welch. And again, it was from his own mouth. No, they had a story from Welch, and it was not a case. All right. So now they're going on. Let's see now who is with you. Okay, so he says he gets high with the guy. So, okay. I'm trying to find the next part where he changes the story again, because they get rid of Meskey. They decide Meskey's not it. Says, okay, so now we get to this point where our cold case team has been able to identify a man currently incarcerated, and we've been able to establish that this man was at Wheaton Plaza the whole day. They could not. That person is Lloyd Lee Welch. They did not prove that he was there. That's not true. However, they also figured out that Ray Meskey seemed to be a peripheral vision at best. His name didn't even come up in the press conference. So they got nothing about that guy actually being involved with Welch at all. So he now that they were so sure it was him, they chucked him. So this is what it's not that you shouldn't eliminate people, but it's just that when you look at an investigation and the detective is absolutely so, this is what happened and this is who's involved, and then never mind. That means to me you're trying to force an issue instead of just investigating and seeing what comes up. So now let's see who's the next people. Okay, now he goes after Teddy. Teddy is his cousin. There's a lot of people in this story, and it gets very confusing. So Teddy, okay, where's Teddy? Yeah, this is okay. The guy on the left is Teddy Welch. That's his cousin. So now he's claiming that Teddy had something to do with this. And at the time, I think Teddy was 11 years old. So they were like so sure Teddy was involved, right? And then they found out he was 11 years old at the time. And not only was he 11 years old at the time, he had 2 broken arms. Two broken arms. So the claim was that, so first of all, Teddy was going to abduct them. And then when they found he was 11 years old, it was kind of ridiculous. He obviously wasn't going to abduct them. So then Teddy was just helping lure them out of the place. But nobody saw a guy walking around with 2 broken arms. And so then Lloyd goes, well, maybe he was wearing a coat. And it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. So anyway, so Teddy was brought into it, and Teddy wasn't happy about that. This is Teddy Welch now. And Teddy Welch, just to show you that some of the characters here, he was hooked up with this guy named Leonard Kreisel. That was his lover. Well, what happened was his mother basically wanted her house fixed up and didn't like her son. So she let this guy take her son as a kind of like a foster father. And he treated him really nice. And he traveled all over the world with his foster dad. And he did all kinds of it got him into business. I mean, he did wonderful things for him, except that he also had sex with him. But so he goes, small price to pay because I'm really into women. But anyway, it wasn't him. Now he ended up going to prison because of because of what he was doing, but he had nothing to do with the crime. And neither did Teddy, because Teddy was freaking 11 years old with broken arms. Anyway, moving along to, let's see. And that's Lee Welch is his dad. Let me see who else okay. So now the story is, now you see all of them in the vehicle together. So now Uncle Dickie comes into it. So now we have cousin Teddy, Uncle Dickie, and Lloyd. And now what they did was, Lloyd says they lured the girls out of the mall, offering them marijuana. And the 12-year-old is like, cool, I want to smoke marijuana. I've never done that before. And the younger girl goes, no, we shouldn't do that. And she goes, oh, come on, it's no big deal. So the girls go out with 3 guys, one with a cast on his arm, and they all get in the vehicle to go smoke weed. Okay, let's see where that ends up. Okay, so it gets there's so many stories, it's hard to say this. Okay, so now he's placed himself in the mall and in the car with those he now identified as his Uncle Dickie, and his cousin Lloyd. They're all kidnappers now. And so what happened? Okay. So how did they end up? So then they ended up someplace. It just gets so confusing. Okay. They ended up someplace. No longer at Mskey's house. Now they're at his house. So his house is this house. It's in Hyattsville, Maryland. That's just quite near me. And so supposedly they went to this house, and then he claims that Uncle Dickie, well, that's a station wagon. Hold on a second. There's Uncle. Now Dickie was also a security guard, so security guards are the number one job of serial killers. So hey, could be him. So anyway, we have Teddy, and Uncle Dickie and him, and there's Uncle Dickie with his wife later on. And what's this picture? Okay, so let's go to this house. All right. So the story is, I'm going to skip the stories. It goes on. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the 6 or 7 or 8 major stories he told. Let me go to the last story, though, and because this is going to now have an issue with evidence. What evidence do they have? Physical evidence of this crime. So I want to tell you the basics, the whole story, the last story. Okay, because I think I've got a 6 written on this page. So clearly there were a lot of stories, and in a 2-hour show, I just can't go there. I'd have to write a whole nother book. All right, this is his story. On March 23rd, Uncle Dickie, this is what Lloyd says, approached me and Teddy with his plan to go up to Wheaton Mall, like I said, to pick up a couple of girls, party with them, and have sex with them. This was a new admission. Lloyd had always insisted on this, just saying partying, not having sex, you see. I told him, no, I don't want to do that. I'll party with you. I'll party with the girls, but I'm not having sex with those girls. I'm with Helen. Okay. That's about as dumb as anything he's ever said. He'll have sex with anything that breathes, especially girls. And I mean girls. Okay. She's with child, as if he cared, because he basically abandoned all his children. As a matter of fact, I don't even want to be in this. You can leave me out. A couple of days later, he talks me in, says, hey, look, I got pot, man. I got plenty of pot. Got some good drugs. We'll all get high and stuff like that. So finally, he talked me into going up there. I go up there. I go into the mall. I saw the 2 girls come walking through. I followed them for a while. I approached them and said, hey, do y'all want to get high? I did say it that way. You want to get high? And the older one said, we've never gotten high before. We don't do that. And I said, well, we'll try it. Everybody's doing it. I mean, it's the 70s, peace, love, rock and roll. And the older one finally said, yeah, let's get high. I'm sorry, but I have a real hard time. These girls had a very nice home with their families. They were pretty sensible, nice young girls. I just don't think that at this 12 and 10 with your sister, you're going to go off to smoke weed when you're from this kind of family. I mean, don't believe this for a minute. The older one said, yeah, let's get high. And the younger one said, no, I don't want to go. And her sister said, oh, come on, we're just going to get high, So we go out of the mall. Dick pulls up. I don't know where Teddy came out of. Probably the hospital with his broken arm. Oh my God, that's horrible. But he came up behind me. The older girl, so before he was like, Teddy was luring the girls. Now he's luring the girls, you see. So he's made himself the abductor, which is interesting. The older girl got in front, like I said. I got in back. The other girl got in back, and we drove around for a while, started getting high. Ted was giving shotgun to the girl, blowing marijuana smoke directly into her mouth. That's Teddy, the 11-year-old. And we were just talking up front there. The detectives noticed that Lloyd had inadvertently placed himself in the front seat. And since they had long ago stopped believing in Teddy's role, it made sense. So now they like his story. Before, see, they like lots of his stories. And when he changed his stories, or they fell apart, or it made no sense, or they found out the guy had broken arms, then they like, oh, we'll just discard that part of the story, but we'll like this part of the story. And while it is true that what a person tells a fictionalized version of something, truth can be embedded in it in smaller parts. It's true. But you've got to be careful with pathological liars that they're not embedding things that are just constantly false, and you're falling for it because you want to believe so badly this is the dude. All right. All right. So he continues on. The other girl, she still wasn't saying anything. Just like I said, I don't know if she was crying or what. I didn't offer her anything because she just looked like she wanted to be by herself. I finally get the ice cream because I did tell Helen I would get some ice cream for her. We go back to the house there, and Dick at the time, I guess, was bickering with Teddy about something. I don't know what it was. And he says, well, they can always meet their maker. You know how that goes. And I got out and I said, well, wait a minute. I'm taking this ice cream home and I don't want to. You all do your thing. Have a good time. And I left. I did not go back to the house until the next day. And it was like out of curiosity to see if the girls were okay or if they were still there or not. So now he says, Helen was with me, but she didn't go downstairs. I did. Now this is back at his father's house. And so now he's going down the stairs, okay, in the back. It's like outside, down to the cellar type thing, I think, or something like that. So she didn't go downstairs, but I did. I saw Dick raping the one girl, and her eyes were rolled back. Like I said, I don't know if she was high or drugged or what, because Dick could get all the drugs all the time. I backed out. About that time, Teddy came. I don't know if he came around this way. I said, see you later. I don't want to be around here. So me and Helen left for a while. I guess it was the next day or next morning or whatever. Dick and Teddy had come over to the house and asked if me and Helen could watch the two girls. The girls that we raped, along with 11-year-old has no arms. Can we go watch the girls? Just babysit for a while. And, I said, oh, what two girls? And he said, the girls we got a hold of. And I said, you still got them, little girls? What are you doing with them? I thought you were going to send them home. And he said, oh, they want to stay a while. They like getting high. And so we went there and we stayed for a while. It was, of course, absurd. You kidnapped two little girls who've now been missing for 4 days. Now you're going to do babysitting. All right. So they go over to babysit. We watched them. Helen, she played with them and everything like that. Helen always loved kids, except the ones that she produced, which she just abandoned. But anyway, I guess at the time she didn't really know what was going on. They weren't hurt or anything. So we watched them 4 or 5 hours. Nothing was ever mentioned about them having sex or anything like that or getting them from the mall. Now Dick finally comes upstairs. So now they're no longer in the basement. Now upstairs. Okay, because it's every single story is different. And where the wife was, Pat, the wife, I don't know where she was. I guess she was out on the porch. It's a very busy place. Lots of people come and go in spite of the fact little girls are being the abducted little girls are in this house. Nobody says anything. They come and go, although it's a huge police investigation. Okay. All right. I didn't see any marks on the girls like they were punched or tortured. They had their clothes on at that time. So, and then neither one of them said, hey, you got to take us back to the mall? So anyway, okay. So then he decides he's going to hitchhike down to Virginia with his wife. And later on, they get down to Virginia. They get their clothes washed. They're hitchhiking, but they're also on a bus or something. And then Dickie comes out, drives down there, and he's got a vehicle with him. And he's got a bag, and they make a big fire. There's a big fire, and he throws the bag in the fire. And apparently that bag has a body of one of the girls in it. Whatever, chopped up girl, by the way. And the story changes over and over again. So now the story comes. So now the police are interested in the basement. Okay, so I'm not going to read any more of his stuff because it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so the police go to that house and they go in the basement. And where's my basement? Here we go. And they go in the basement of the house. They spray it up with a luminol type thing called, I think it's Blue Star. They spray it up. Oh my God, it lights up. They're like, this is where the murder happened. Okay. This is where the murder happened, in the basement. And there was some picture at one point Lloyd had drawn with a couple rooms in it. Oh my God, that was like the back room. It clearly happened there that they were killed. And then Lloyd does another whole story about, I guess, Uncle Dickie, or was it his dad? I can't remember which one now. They chopped up one of the girls, and and the other one they kept alive, which makes zero sense. And so apparently one of the girls was put into a duffel bag or something like that. And so then somehow they all get to Virginia. Let's see if I can find my show you where they were going to. Oh, here we go. So we're way up there in Maryland, and now they're going all the way down to Bedford County, Virginia. It's a very long place, but that's where the family has property, you see. And so they go down there and they arrive. Now, there's different stories about the arrival that Lloyd and his wife, they arrived with a couple of duffel bags, and they asked the sister or somebody down there to wash some bloody clothes in the bags. And they said it was bloody because they had put meat in the bag and it had spilled out. And then there was a dead dog story. And then the woman said, no, she's not going to do that. But then the story changes, and apparently the bag is supposed to have the body of the younger girl in there. And so obviously you're not going to be hitchhiking with a body in a bag or taking a bus. So now we go to, there was a vehicle. And originally he says his uncle or which or whatever drove the vehicle down and threw the bag in the fire. But then later on, he says he drove it down. And so now there's this fire. You see how confusing this is? Now there's this fire. Now this is the location that she says this is one of the relatives. I don't know where they are. And so this whole area. There's grave sites there. This place has been there for generations and generations, hundreds of years. And people were buried just out on the area, which is important to know. So that was there. And then there was supposedly this bonfire, a burn pit on a place called Taylor's Mountain. And here's they brought down this duffel bag with a body in it and chucked the body into the fire. But it sounds like it's not even heavy. And the girls aren't that young. So we're talking 90, at least probably, maybe the younger one could have been 70 pounds, 80 pounds. But you know what I mean? At least it would be a weighty bag. And then if you're going to chop her up, probably it's not a good idea to put her in a bag. In a duffel bag like that, and then drive her all the way down to far away Virginia, and then ask people to burn the body up for you. And so there are people there that say, "Oh yeah, I threw that in the fire," and another neighbor said, "I smelled something bad," and just nonsense stuff that there's no proof of, because the police had one of the things they had done with Lloyd is when they got in there, they were trying to get the story off of him. Then they went public, and they made his life in prison miserable, because now they were going public saying, we think he did it. And they're like, oh my God, you kill little girls. And so he's like frantic about that. Then they went to the relatives, and they all over the relatives. And each one of the relatives seems like a liar anyway. So all the relatives were telling stories that were questionable. And so it was really hard to know what truth there was, especially that many. We're talking decades after this happened, that anybody would remember this and remember that, or he did that, or what. And a lot of them didn't like Lloyd anyway, so they're willing to throw him under the bus, So there are whole bunches of stories. So now you might ask, what evidence do they have? So they've got two places where physical evidence could be. Remember, there's no witnesses to Lloyd being involved or any of his family being involved. No witnesses. What they have is a claim that girls were killed in this basement, and that the luminol showed it up. And they say there was this fire pit, and they dug the crap out of the area, and they came up with supposedly bone fragments, a tooth. And they said the bone, if you listen to the documentary, they'll say human bone fragments. And then the tooth, they lost the tooth. So I don't have a picture of that. They lost the tooth. And then they said they were also found in one of this area, this piece of metal. And they say that could have been her glasses. Okay. And then they found this, what looked like it could have been like a necklace. And they said, oh my God, the younger girl always wore a necklace like this, a bead necklace. Now, notice where they're digging. See the house? We're talking about, 40 years? These people have a lot of kids. There's playground equipment out there, tons of children running around. Are you going to tell me not one other kid could have had a little beady necklace? I know my granddaughter drops his crap all over the place. I mean, I find it in the yard. The dogs get hold of it. I mean, her friends have beaded necklaces. Everybody has beaded necklaces. It's been decades. You're not going to say one other kid could have dropped a beaded necklace. And then this is her glasses. Is that really? Those are... What proof? This is absolutely zero proof. So they didn't find anything that represented the girls outside of their own imaginations, where they're trying to say this matches this, and that's just nonsense. So let's go to the bone fragments. And this is not in the documentary, and this is one of the problems I have with a lot of things, that unless you go search for it, and I found this inscribed, this is what I found, and I find this absolutely fascinating, because I'm like, do they have forensic proof? That's what I want to know. Which way? I think it's this one. Shannon will testify, this is because I haven't gone to court yet, will testify that with the exception of one bone sample, all other samples were found not to be human bone fragments. Item FBI number 8 was examined with inconclusive results as to whether that fragment was a human bone fragment. They, according to the court documents, did not come up with any human bone fragments in that burn pit area. So they have no proof that a body was there. Now, let's go to the other big, huge claim, and that would be the basement. Oh my God! He said she was chopped up in the basement. Was she? Let's look at the evidence. Upon information and belief, I'm sorry, that's not it. That's how many people were buried there. Many burial plots. Sorry. Back in the house. Back in the house in Hyattsville, Maryland. This person, whose name I can't pronounce, I'm not sure, will testify that the swab from the back of the basement wall, the swab, not swabs from the floor, swabs from the wall, swabs from here, swabs from there. We're talking one swab. Well, did include human DNA. Doesn't say it's blood either. But no typing results were obtained. Furthermore, results ran on the collected samples potentially identified it as being blood. Potentially. So they had this. Sometimes, one thing I want to point out at the basement, sometimes when you do the luminol type stuff, it will react to other things other than blood. So it could be something else. They would have to test to prove it is blood. What they've got is one swab of some human DNA. Whatever, now, let's assume it actually is blood. Could be animal blood. Now, this is in a basement. Again, 30 years. We don't know that this is something, whatever this is, could have been anything. It had anything to do with 1975. This could be a person who does taxidermy in the basement. This could be a person who kills chickens in the basement. This is a person who knows what they like to do in the basement, or this is a person who does wood stuff in the basement and cut themselves, and some of it went on the wall. I don't know. But the point is, they got only one swab, and that one swab didn't prove a damn thing. So there's no proof this is a murder site. There is also no proof, not a shred of proof, that a body was burned up. The body was burned up on the lawn, was brought down and bagged and thrown in a fire. Not a shred of proof of that either. And they say they don't know where the other child's body is. Like, again, why would you keep one alive and another one? It didn't make any sense. So, what evidence did they have to convict him? I'm going to go to your comments in a second, but let me put this up here. Because I just find this so important. All right. So this is what they said. We're of the belief that this conviction is the oldest bodiless prosecution ever that got a conviction. Okay. Now let's see what his where's his hold on a second. This is what his uncle says. They had no way of proving that he had anything to do with any of this other than him telling them. And that is correct. So their entire case was just a story told by Lloyd. Never was there any proof of anything he told to be true. Why couldn't it have been Meskey working without him at all? Why couldn't this guy with the tape recorder man be somebody who committed the crime and had nothing to do with him at all? Could it have been him? Could have been. or he just likes to insert himself into investigations, and that's the kind of guy he is. He's that kind of guy. Could he have done it with Meskey and now be blaming his relatives? Sure. All these, there's a million possibilities here. But I don't see one shred of evidence that he actually committed the crime. He did confess to the abduction part and nothing else. But he thought at some point they managed to, through their machinations, get him to believe that he would get a death penalty in Virginia. And I guess he decided, shoot, I'll just say I did the abduction part and I'll let it go with that and take the plea bargain. And that's what he did. And he's in Virginia in prison. So, but I will say, I don't know if he's innocent, but I also don't know if he's guilty at all, because I do not believe that there was proof that he committed the crime or any of his relatives committed the crime. Now mind you, this relatives, there's a lot of incest going on, family, a lot of bad behavior. It's not good. It's not good. But I always believed, and people seem to believe for the most part, that when a person is prosecuted, it ought to be based on evidence, and I don't see any. So do I think he was wrongfully convicted? Yes. Do I think he's innocent? I have no clue. I just don't know, because he tells so many lies and so many stories that I'm not overly convinced that any of the stuff that he said happened actually even happened. I'm perfectly willing to believe it was the tape recorder guy that has just never been identified. He's a serial killer that grabbed 2 girls. They have no idea who he is or where he put them. And he could have gone on to kill 20 more people. Could be a guy we just don't even know exists. It could be the Meskey guy. Who knows? Could be Meskey and him? Could be not. Could be him and his relatives. Could be him alone. I don't know. But there's no evidence, in my opinion, that supports that he should have been prosecuted. So that's my thoughts on that. So I'm going to go to all your many, many comments. Whew. Pornography, but no, there's no videos of the girls. There's no photos of the girls being abused or any pornographic videos. Did he like porn? Yeah. I mean, that was, yeah. Walter Matilda says, was there some urgency for the police to close off this case? No, they were I think that's just one of these things. It nagged them for decades. I mean, it was it was a really big case. It really was. And the girl, not even found. Zero information on this case after all those years. And when the cold case squad got involved, they did come across interesting information. His original contact with the police, with his failed polygraph and his phony story, whatever part of the story was phony or the whole story was phony, interested them. And so did Meskey. So they decided, as a cold case team, they were going to go forth with that, which is fine. My problem was the way they interviewed him, to me, was not correct. All the things they did, if I were a lawyer, I would have shredded that in court, because they led and pushed and they did all kinds of things I think were not okay in the interviews and the interrogations. The whole managing of him was, I think, inappropriate. I just don't know why I never got a lawyer involved. Maybe because he just was bored. I think this guy was a kind of guy who always liked. This is a guy, a big drug guy, liked a lot of sex, liked to do a lot of things that were probably not too legal. This guy liked thrills. I think he was bored in prison. And I think when the police came to talk to him, he was like excited to be able to play games with the police for as long as he could. I don't know that he's dissatisfied even with the result. He may be going, hey, cool, I got to be famous now. And who knows what his issues are? Because I always say, don't try to get into the mind of a psychopath, because they play games for the sake of playing games. And so I don't blame the cold case squad for wanting to solve the case and putting the effort out. I just don't believe that all the methodology was correct. And I don't believe they had any evidence that there wasn't, in my opinion, biased, highly biased, because they wanted to believe these things. So they put 2 and 2 together and came up with 4 when it wasn't. So, yes, their brother did become a police officer. That is correct. I don't think they like this one. He didn't get death penalty, A. Um, I mean, I never understand how they pick their cases. I really don't. Not so sure. He's not likable at all, though. I mean, he's such a scumbag. I don't know that many people would want to jump on the bandwagon and say, get this guy out of prison, because he did molest little children. So, you know. Let's see. Elements that seem to sort of line up. Sort of is the point. What was lining up? Let's look at what was actually lining up. I don't know what you think is lining up. The only thing that is known about the girls is that they were abducted outside the mall or on the way home. That's all is known. Any story you make up from that point on is not verifiable. I don't know what's lining up. That they're creepy people who wanted to have sex with girls. I mean, okay. That they took them someplace. Okay. That they might have taken the bodies to a faraway place and gotten rid of them. Sure. Meskey could have done that. Tape recorder man could have done that. They could have gotten that guy in. He'd say all kinds of crazy stuff like that too. He could say a completely different type of story. Yeah, I abducted the girls. I took them to a motel. I drove out of Maryland into West Virginia. I took them to a motel. I drugged them. I had sex with them in a motel, and then I strangled them, put them in my car, and I dumped them in Tennessee. That's a good story. It's not, but you have to prove stories, even if things line up. That you don't prosecute based on things could be. You prosecute on things that are proven, and I just don't see any of it here. He's an excellent suspect, Stephanie. I'm not taking him out of a suspect, and I'm not saying he didn't do it. I'm just saying I don't see where the evidence is that was enough that he should have been convicted. I mean, he was willing to be convicted, mind you. He confessed, but that happens. What's his name? Let me pull him up. I always forget the guy's name. The case out of New York, little boy in New York. I did a show on him. Which one was it? Okay, hold on. It's what's the little boy in New York? New York City, famous case. Oh, Eaton Patz. Little boy is walking to school and disappears. Later, they eventually convicted a guy, and I don't believe that guy did it. He told a story. He was in the area, but the story to me had so many holes in it. So does half of his stories have holes in them. So that guy told stories and he got convicted, and that is one that I also think I don't believe he did it. I think I have better suspects than the guy who was like mentally off who claimed he did it. Let's say, makes me think of the Goonies. The kid gets handed a glass of dirty water and the villain says, "It's wet, ain't it? Drink it." The cop served up any old conclusion and call it the truth. Well, the infamous, okay, what was in the infamous smelly green duffel bag? I don't know. Would you really think that you put the body part, you chop up one girl and stuff her in a duffel bag, and then you certainly couldn't hitchhike with it. So that whole story. So you'd have to put that in a car, and then you get down there and nobody looks in it. So there's different stories about who threw the bag into the fire, and nobody looks in the bag to see what is. The one person said it was just bloody clothes and some clothes with blood on them, and she didn't like that. And they said it stunk. I don't know. It's a good story. It's interesting. I mean, again, I'm not saying he didn't commit the crime or part of the crime or whatever the heck. My problem is, if we're going to have the law, and the law is supposed to follow certain rules, this is my problem with the Innocence Project. Sometimes they get a guilty person off on technicalities. And what I've always said is, like, if you're going to get, if you're trying to hold law enforcement and prosecutors and the justice system responsible for putting together a proper case, and you want to say they did things they shouldn't have done, and there's so many of them that this guy should not have been convicted because of that, fine, then he gets off through technicalities, not because he's innocent. Now, I just don't know whether he's guilty. I have no evidence that he's guilty, but he could well be. But I just don't see anything in that case that was solid enough. But he was already in prison and he confessed. So they were like, well, we'll run with it. Everybody goes home happy, in theory. But except for this kind of bothered me. This was said by the polygraph lady. She said this: these two little girls were tortured. Okay, right there, I'm pissed off. We have no clue that they were tortured. We don't. We have no idea. This to me is wrong. You don't say things like this. We only know they were abducted. That is what we know. They could have been, for example, they could have been given drugs that knocked them out completely. And while they were completely knocked out, they were sexually assaulted and strangled. So they were never tortured. They were murdered, but not tortured. And raped maybe, but still not tortured. Then it says here, let me see if I can go around. Whatever. I can't even read it. Wait a minute, give me a, where is it? Oh, and the parents were tortured and will be tortured until the day they die. Now, this whole investigation, all the things that this piece of crap said, all right, that Lloyd said, because it amuses him to say things, all the things he said about what's happened to those girls. Yes, that kind of information will torture parents. But why are you allowing this guy to say all this crap when it's not proven any of it's true? And so it's just mean stuff that he's spewing out because he feels like it. And, so yeah, the parents are being tortured, but they're also being tortured by the whole methodology here and by what is being said. And that bothers me because we just don't know. The latchkey kids of the 70s. Well, again, we didn't hear about this. This is such a shocking thing that's why it really threw for all of us for kind of a loop. It's like, oh my God, my mother, I can still remember my mother's face on that. And just because it was such a terrible thing. The basement the basement was, first of all, the first basement was near the mall with Meskey. And then the second basement was, I guess then that was his father's house. Now, did he spend time in a basement? A lot of stuff. If you're doing drugs, hiding in the basement is a good place to do them when you're doing your drugs. So do I think crap went on down in the basement? Absolutely. But do I know that the murder of the two girls happened in the basement and the rape happened in the basement? I don't know. And I refuse, even if I say I don't like this guy and don't care if he's in prison the rest of his life, he deserves what he gets. But I'm sticking with the legal issues here and the profiling methodology and crime scene analysis. It's pronounced bro. Did I say bro or did I say bo? And no, I don't agree with that. I don't like that term, Keystone Cops. I think it's very insulting to the police. Most police, including detectives, work very hard to solve crimes, and they want to solve them. They aren't doing things haphazardly. I mean, every case has things that don't go as right as they should. And I think these guys had it I think they did everything they could to solve this case. I do believe that. My only problem is I think that they had confirmation bias throughout this case because first it was going to be that first guy and they were forcing it. And now they were forcing this. And now they've taken the evidence they think they found in Virginia and forcing that. They're forcing too many things to make the conclusion. And they were fortunate that he was willing to confess because of the situation so that they got to say, we were right. He confessed. That's what happened. Close the case. I get it. I get it where they're coming from. And they may believe that they're absolutely correct to this day. And they may still think that all that effort they put out to get him worked. And they may have the right guy. I just don't see that the evidence supports that. Now, it's possible, because I know this is true for me, that when you work on a case, sometimes you know a whole lot of stuff. You've seen it, you've talked to people, and you know you got the right guy. You know that it's true. And even without the confirmation bias, you just have so much information, you know that it's true. But can you prove it? And should it be closed if you cannot prove it? And should somebody be convicted on something that is not provable? And I'm always concerned about confessions because I've seen too many false confessions. That's not an unusual thing, especially from somebody who's bored in prison. Serial killers all the time will say they kill people they never killed. They will make up so many stories about how murders went down, which turns out when they examine evidence aren't even true. They'll claim they committed crimes in locations they never were in. I mean, they get their kicks out of that. So he may be that same type. He might be a serial killer. I don't know. But he's a psychopath. There's no question. But the question is did he commit the crime, or is he just having fun talking about it? And every time he gets closer to what they believe, he gives them pieces of information to keep them coming back, because otherwise he's just sitting in prison bored. But if he figures out where they're going and can throw that little bone out there, like, and they grab that bone and they come back, and he's playing the game. So I think you have to be very careful when you do interviews. In my opinion, you have to be very careful not to throw out any bones to him, and you've got to be careful not to grab onto bones from him because you want to believe it. So I read enough of the interviews and watched enough of them to be concerned about the way they were conducted. I think they were both very well-meaning people. I just don't agree with their interrogation method. So let's see what else you have to say. There's small girls who like to smoke dope. Yeah, they if they were runaways, if they were girls, their whole reputation and the family's reputation doesn't match that. There are girls at 12 years old who will be happy to smoke some weed, because some of the girls that were supposedly in his vehicle, that got into his vehicle on their own, probably were getting into his vehicle to smoke weed. So I'm not saying he couldn't get a 12-year-old into his vehicle, but these two girls under those circumstances do not make sense to me. I don't buy it for a minute. Yeah. So they were, in my opinion, simply abducted. And I still think the story, the most likely one, is the story about the tape recorder guy, because he was luring them, and I could see them being willing to talk to him because they're so excited about being on the radio or whatever. I mean, their father was in the radio business, right? I mean, they're like, oh my God, he's going to be so happy to hear that we got our voices on the radio. I can see them falling for that, because that's innocent. And, but I'd like to know who that tape recorder man was. It doesn't seem to have been him. He was too young to be that person. So I want to know who it was. And for some reason, they dropped that whole line as if it didn't have any importance after a while, because they had him. And I personally think it's tape recorder guy, but again, I don't have any evidence there either. Wannabe says, thanks, Pat, for showing a balanced views. It will be helpful for future cases. It's, my hope always with the show is to insert logic into things and to look at things for the way they are, the reality and all that, without a whole bunch of bias or just wanting to promote one thing or the other. To me, it's about understanding evidence and how things work. And so, yeah, he probably will spend the rest of his life in prison. He's already, what is he now? 70 or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any other reason that dude was running around talking to little children with this little tape recorder thing. He's a creepy. That's pretty creepy. What? Let's see. Yeah, this is true. a desire to bring the case to conclusion for the aging parents. They really, the fact these parents never had any clue what happened to their daughters. I mean, I don't know that this, I guess the theory now is that they got justice of some sort because he got a few extra years in prison. They know what happened. I don't think they do know what happened. And I don't think they know exactly what happened. They just got some gruesome details. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I think I was just an outsider, and I think one of them had seen me on television and thought I was, good at what I did profiling wise, and wanted me to profile this guy. And I would certainly profile him as a sexual psychopath. I have no issue there. I don't know what they exactly wanted me to review at that point in time, and I don't know which detective it was. All I know is it was a thought that one of them had, and I don't know if it was these two guys in the cold case investigation or it was other people were involved. I don't know, but I just remember when I had the possibility, I thought, oh, this would be really interesting, and that it just never happened, and I was not surprised, but that would have been good. Technically, I'm trying to remember where that Mason-Dixon line is. I always get confused about that too, because I am in Maryland. So, that's permitted. No, you can lie during investigations. That is acceptable, and they do that a lot. That's why they can lie about the polygraph as well. You take the test. Oh, you failed it. You can say whatever you want, because it's an interrogation tool. So yeah, you can say so and so saw you. This happened. We have proof of this, and you want to see if you can trip them up. And some of that I get, but just to me, you just have to be careful how you do it. Like there's ways to. My favorite one that I do with this one guy that what I'd wanted to know was he admitted to being on a path where a woman was killed, was raped and murdered. He admitted to being on the path on the same evening she was raped and murdered. However, she was attacked at dusk, and there was a longer time frame as to when he could have been there. And so what I wanted to know was he there at dusk? But if I asked him the question, were you there at dusk? Well, first of all, he would then have to decide whether I'm trying to get a yes or a no on that, right? But I didn't ask that question. What I asked him was, I said, well, what? I said, why did you even take that path? Because why did you do this? And why did you do that? Why did you take that path? Oh, no, what? No, wait a minute. You were on the path. Why did you go over to the main road? Why would you do that when you could go straight down the path? And he said, well, because it was getting dark and it made me nervous. That was the answer I wanted. He was there at dusk. So, but I didn't ask him the question straight out, and I didn't lie to him either. I simply asked him a question. So there are ways when you're interrogating or doing interviews where you can ask questions and get answers, or to ask them to tell their story, write a statement down, that you can do statement analysis and other things without actually lying. But getting things, what order are they saying these things in, and asking specific questions that will, but not leading. There's a case, and I'll do this. I'll have to do this one. It's a famous serial killer case, and I knew the detective that was involved, and I did not like this guy. Now, the next detective was great. He's one of my favorite guys. But this other detective, what he did was he would say, what did you use to strangle her? And the guy goes, my hands. He goes, well, that's not true. Okay, and he picks it. He goes, what about what's hanging from the wall? Oh, you mean the curtain thing pulls? Yeah, I used that. Talk about leading. I mean, it's like, just put the words in his mouth. Tell him, no, yes, you got it right. It's behind door number 3. Yeah, that's that. And then you put that down there and you say, well, he confessed to using that item to strangle the woman. No, he didn't. You told him that's what you forced him into that. And this is why I saw a lot of this happening here. And that to me screws up the whole thing. And if you were actually in court, a defense attorney would shred that, or should shred that. Now, mind you, actually the Virginia case, maybe I'll do that Virginia case next week. It's really interesting. That guy did get convicted of that crime. He did not commit that crime. And there's proof. There's no proof he didn't commit the crime, but for that one, there was proof, and it's a really fascinating case. Maybe I'll do that one. Yeah, you use shoelaces, right? Oh my goodness. Oh, the mall, that was a huge thing. It was like a whole change, and we got Tyson's Corner, and we're out near where I lived, and it was like the cat's meow, to go to the mall and all that. So, and now we don't seem to like indoor malls. Suddenly we want to have outdoor malls. It's weird. So, and as far as the other thing about, that location over all those years, you got, people with burying graves in the backyard. A lot of times they don't go to a cemetery to bury people because it's expensive. So you just dig a hole and stick them in it and put a rock there. As a matter of fact, there was a little cemetery. Now talk about the bone fragment thing. This could be true. I went to a cemetery on a case. I was looking at something. I was in Southern Virginia, and this cute town, and the person took me to the family cemetery, and it was in a woods. So from behind the houses where the family, sort of the extended family lived, there was woods, and there was a clearing in the woods, and they had little gravestones. And one of the gravestones was just a rock, and on it was painted baby. It was really sad. But here's an interesting thing. Take the rock away. And then you dig that area up looking for whether these girls were burned there, right? You come across a bone there. Maybe it was a baby bone. Maybe it was a fragment of a baby bone from years ago where they didn't report it to the authorities that the baby had been born. Maybe it was stillborn, for example, and they just never reported it. And they just buried the baby in the backyard. And so therefore, you can have bone fragments have nothing to do with the crime when you have hundreds of years of people burying people in an area. So it's also a good area to bury people in that you don't want found. But, it could go either way. So just to be, that doesn't prove, even if even if they prove there were a bunch of human bone fragments, it wouldn't mean anything to me. Now, if they had DNA that proved it was these girls, well, then slam dunk. Absolutely. If they had video, yes. If they had photos, yes. If they had their DNA in the basement, yes. But they didn't have anything except his story. And I just don't think that is enough to convict somebody on, even if they're willing to confess. So why did he fear the death penalty at his age? Well, first of all, you're on death row, then maybe he didn't like death row more so than the penalty. Maybe just want to stay in general population. I don't know what happens in Virginia. And yeah, I mean, these days it takes forever to pretty much nobody ever gets put to death anymore. So yeah, he'd probably be 87 if it ever happened. But maybe he just didn't want to be on death row. He preferred to be someplace else. So it's, I don't know. Again, I don't try to get in the mind of psychopaths. They have their reasons for doing things. He didn't have to confess at all. He could have said, let's go to court. I'm kind of surprised he didn't want to have the fun of going to court. I don't know. I honestly don't know why he decided to take a plea. Maybe he's just tired. Maybe just got bored of the thing that he was using to not be bored. I don't know. I have no clue. So, but yeah, that's a good question. Don't know. Psychopaths. That's who does that. I mean, he did like him young. So he didn't have any problem with having sex with a 10-year-old. I'm pretty sure he did not, according to documents, rape any children. He did molest. Yeah. And and again, you have people who commit a lot of incest, and they don't have, they, as brothers and sisters, they've involved themselves in things like that. Some girls start getting, having sex at 14 in order to get drugs. So for a guy hooked up with a girlfriend and the girl's 12 and he's on some drugs and he reaches over and says, "This is nice to touch." That's what they did. And to him, it may not have been that big a deal. I don't even know if the girlfriend cared that much. And she eventually turned him in, but she seemed to be pretty questionable. He was supposedly close to getting parole, but I again don't know what that exactly means. I did read that. Was he going to automatically get parole, or was he up for the chance of getting parole and could have not have gotten parole, depending on his behavior in prison? Did he think everybody in law enforcement is against him and there's no way the parole board was going to let him out? I don't know. Did he not want to get out at that age and have no place to go? No clue. No clue. I don't necessarily think, no, people think when you don't see somebody abducted that they weren't abducted, that they went willingly. And that's just not true. Again, it's a window of opportunity. Nobody except him claims they got into anybody's car or were abducted. So we just don't know. There was that window of opportunity for whatever reasons that person was able to take them away. So is it a good book to get? It's kind of torturous. I mean, it's a long haul through all that, mostly I went through the whole book because I wanted to see how his stories changed over and over again. If I were writing a book on the case or doing a fancy video or a documentary, I would like to take everything and nail it down to the different stories without so much extra stuff. But it all depends how much patience you have, But it's not a bad book. It was very interesting as far as all the whole story. I was glad I read it. I wish they had some of the other information had been in there, like I found on Scribd. I found the information on the bone fragments and the supposed murder scene and not that wasn't included in the book. It's not. Sometimes things are left out, and it's like, why is that not in there? So, most the majority of it is just transcribed interviews. A great majority of it. I think there's some missing things, but anybody who writes a book, it's like doing a show. Every time I do a show, I get tons of complaints about what I didn't put in the show. When I did the recent 5 minutes on the Madeleine McCann case on Fox, on News Nation, how many people commented, "Why didn't you talk about this? Why didn't you talk about that?" I'm like, I had 5 minutes. You get 5 minutes. You can only do what you can do. And when you're writing a book, you have to decide how long that book is going to be. Because at a certain point, people don't want to read it when it gets too long. So they get bored. And so a lot of people did say they got bored with this book. It was like a half and half. Half people really liked it and half of them really disliked it. And they were like, this book was just drudgery to go through. But I was particularly interested in all the stories and how the detectives were doing their interviews, so I could, in the end, determine whether I thought the interviews were conducted the way I would prefer them to be conducted, or whether there was too much manipulation of him as far as getting the answers they wanted, and not really going with making sure that he wasn't being swayed, so that they got false confession after false confession after false confession. So that was my interest. I think the real offender was nothing like the known suspects. I think his camouflage is near perfect. He's possibly still hiding in plain sight. Well, he'll be dead now. If he was middle-aged, he's dead now. They said he was nicely dressed and so a type that could easily lure somebody with the story and the nice clothing and being a little bit older, so that he would be like a father figure. That's not a father figure. That's like a druggy dude, But again, we just don't know. But I tend to lean toward the tape recorder dude. Um, I bet that lit everybody up. The Maddie McCann. Well, I got everything from Pat. Thank you. You know, I can't believe you actually got to say this on TV, and other people that just said I was a troll and I was just, you know, a terrible person and all kinds of things. And somebody said I should make myself up more if I'm going to be on national TV. I'm like, I look the same as I do today because I don't have skill in hair and makeup. I'm like, if they want me to look better, bring me into the studio and give me hair and makeup. Or do you just want to hear what I have to say? So it was pretty funny. So that was obviously one of the haters. But I was like, yeah, it was kind of a mixed bag of people trashing me and saying I was a fraud, and people saying, thank you for speaking up. But my favorite one is always, you obviously don't know anything about the Madeleine McCann case. Like, okay. Yeah, I think I do. Let's see. Stephanie says there was a whole Uncle Dickie was a security guard angle. If he was involved, I could see authority working to make the girls compliant. Yeah, security guards do have that advantage because they're in a uniform. So yes, I do like this. That's I said, serial killer's number one job is security guard. And what you don't want to do is walk out with it. Go, you know, at night, like, could you walk me to my car in the dark parking lot, Mr. Security Guard? And he's like, sure. Now, mind you, you know, I've had sons be in businesses like that. So in my own family, yes, I've had a security guard, male security guard. So, you know, so as I point out, you know, when I say something like security guard is the number one job of serial killers, I'm not insulting security guards. You know, people always say, "Oh, well, don't talk about security guards that way." No, I'm not. I just, you know, it's just, you know, it's an easy job to get, especially in the mall. All you have to do is breathe. You know, they're not even armed, so it's not like armed security. So it's an easy job to get, and they need so many security guards that, and serial killers do like the power and control. So yes. And he was maybe faking being a security guard or a police officer. His uncle was a security guard. Absolutely. That would be one way to get them to come out. And that was the one story about that one girl who said, you know, your brother stole some stuff and we'll go to the parking lot and talk it over. That was the most interesting, if it's true, story about him that would make me think maybe it's him because he supposedly was in Wheaton Plaza and supposedly did that. If it's him. And I don't know that it is. Now, it could have been actually his uncle, or it could have been another guy. I just don't know. So, but as I say, I'm not taking him away as a suspect. I just don't think there should have been enough to convict. Pat, keep doing what you're doing. It's very easy for haters to criticize when they're hiding behind a keyboard. Of course. Hey, I don't take it seriously. Believe you me. As I said to somebody the other day, if I took all the hate comments I had and wallpapered my house with them, there wouldn't be a white space left on the wall. You know, keeps me humble, nothing else. Aren't you nice? Wannabe. I was a guard in a downtown city park at night, unarmed. Uh-oh. Did anybody go missing in the park? Oh my goodness. Oh Lord. But yeah, you know, there's a handyman is another popular job of serial killers. Why? Because a handyman can easily get a job by walking around, knocking on doors. It doesn't have to be hired by somebody. A lot of times that person is somebody who's may have trouble, you know, keeping regular work. And by the way, we have a handyman in our family too. So there you go. And then I talk about guys who work as bouncers, and one of my sons was a bouncer. But I also have police in our family. So, you know, the guy was he was also a carny too. So he's in the carnival, and that's an easy job to get as you're going around the country. And there's a lot of sketchy people working with carnivals, because again, it's a job you can get when you're homeless. When you have problems with substance abuse, when you're running from the law. I mean, there's a reason people, you know, but that doesn't mean everybody who works for a carnival is a crook. No, you know, so, you know, don't go there where just because it can draw a certain group of people and it doesn't mean everybody else in that group is that kind of person. But so, yeah, don't take it that way. Oh, look at you. Tim, I grew up a couple miles from Tyson's Corner. Oh, wow. My mother never knew where we were. It was a different America. It was. I grew up in Mclean, Virginia, and I walked to school. I ran through the parks. I went everywhere when I was, yeah. And before that, I was in Richmond, New Jersey. And, that was the, come in before the lights come on type of thing. And so, yeah, it was really kind of nice. And it's very sad now because it's summertime. And I was just at my granddaughter's friend's birthday party. We were at the park and I was talking to one of the mothers and I said, what do you plan to do with your son this summer? And she goes, I don't know, because you can't let him just go running around where, he's 8, and used to be that an 8-year-old in the summertime, he'd just go run around with the other boys and kick a ball or go play baseball or go swimming in somebody's backyard pool, go running in the woods, play with dogs, go look for frogs. Now you can't let him go anyplace. So now, and also there's no children outside because they're all inside doing electronics. So now they don't have any kids to play with. Then you got to kill a whole summer off with these kids. And they got no place to go run and play. It's kind of sad. I like it way. Criminals throughout Pat's family. I hope not. Oh my goodness. Stephanie says that's why this case is so sad. All of us kids here in that era did the same exact thing the Lyons girls were doing. Could have been any of us. It wasn't. Yeah, they were even walking through, and they probably walked to school too. You didn't used to take a bus to school when you lived right next. Just a 10-minute walk from school. You walked to school. When I lived in Richmond, New Jersey, I walked a mile to school. And I remember because I used to take all these shortcuts through people's backyards. It was really fun. I had a little trail I used to go through. And then when I came home, half of that walk home was solidly downhill on a sidewalk. And I used to start at the top of running all the way down the hill. And I used to come home for lunch. I would run home for lunch and take me 20 minutes. And then my mother would have tuna fish sandwiches. And I would sit down, I eat my tuna fish sandwich, and I go back to school. And if it snowed, we didn't have snow days. We went to school. So yeah, I was walking all over that town too. And I moved to Virginia when I was 9. So at 8 years old, I walked to school and back a long distance. I also walked to town. I remember because there was a stamp shop I used to go to. I walked to town. I also walked to the swimming pool. 8 years old. Nobody thought a thing of it. Kind of a shame. I wish things were like that. Maybe we were just stupid back then or just didn't get much news and people were getting murdered, but we didn't know about it. So it was kind of nicer. So yeah, that's true. I mean, how did we survive? Well, some of us didn't. Some of us fell down holes and broke our necks and stuff like that. But yeah, people just ran around, and chances are you have more children, so in case but it's like a different world. It really is. Oh my God. Seriously, did you go to the hobby store at Salona Village? Did you go to Salona Pizza too? Oh yeah. Oh, someone who knows my town. Oh my God. That's so neat. Wow. Salona Village. Yep. Once upon a time, Mclean, Virginia was actually quite small, and we used to call it it had a bunch of gas stations and a grocery store and a People's drugstore, and really nothing much else. And now, of course, it's built up and extraordinarily expensive. But it was expensive even then because most of us who lived there would say, "Oh, we live a mile from the Kennedys," and that was yeah. So that's really cool. Yeah. Oh. The tuna fish, I loved them. And, we didn't worry about mayonnaise because, you made that thing all full of mayonnaise in the morning and your white bread and it's soaked in, and then it sat in the hot room for like 4 hours and then you eat it. That's if you're taking the sandwich to school, right? And none of us killed over from eating warm mayonnaise. So, oh my God, that's funny. Isn't that neat? Well, yeah, it's just a shame. I mean, it was like, I feel like this case, yeah, it did change the way people thought, especially because it was also 2 girls. I mean, it's so shocking. The other one that I think really messed people up, and that was more recent, was the case in Spotsylvania, Virginia. One girl was kidnapped, and then the next kidnapping was 2 girls off of the only two daughters of this family, and they were kidnapped off of their doorstep at home. And And that was Zaps. I'll do that case one of these days. It's one of the Lisk sisters. Is Sophia Silva. Sophia Silva was a girl that was kidnapped first, and then the Lisk sisters, who were, how old were the Lisk sisters? That's a horrible case, and I'm not sure about the guy they got on that. That was kind of weird. Lisk sisters were how old were they? She was 15 and her sister was 12. Horrible case. Yeah. And I was just starting into profiling at the time when that case happened, and I actually had a really good suspect. It turned out I don't believe he did it, but he was a good suspect, and I learned a lot because he was creepy. And but anyway, yes, that would be Richard Evanitz. This is just some strange things about that case too, and but I haven't looked at that case in so many years. But the guy that I was looking at lived in that area, and he was online trying to. I went online I think I was a 14-year-old girl because I picked that age, and he was on their sexual stuff with a 14-year-old girl. And I tried to get the police to close in on him, and it didn't seem to work out. But I tried to get him to meet me, so that would have been good. So, but I played my part as a 14-year-old, and I still have all the transcripts from that. So, here's thunder. We're not supposed to have any rain today. That is bizarre. Anyway, okay, I'm going to go. Thank you for being here. This was, one of these things that I really enjoy. I just want to let you know. Is a lot of times when I start doing these cases, I was asked to do the Lyon sister case, and I really didn't know what I was exactly going to say about this case because I hadn't thought about it in years. And so I was mostly interested in the fact that I often do talk about cold cases not being solved by anything but DNA or a confession. Well, this was a confession, theoretically. And so there's no body, no DNA. So it's not like, a lot of cold cases are closed these days because you put the DNA, some old DNA, and you put it in the bank and it matches somebody and you go, wow, that's great. We solved the case. And it's wonderful because you can finally put to rest a case where you never have solved it without that DNA match. Some guy sometimes isn't even a suspect. And you're like, who the heck's this dude? And it turns out to be that it matches and it's him. And 20 years later, he goes to prison. That's cool. I have no objection to that. But my point that I've often made is that people think that it's easy to just go in and solve a cold case by going on the internet and talking about it and all this stuff. The chances are very, very minute. And this was a case where they put in massive amount of hours with somebody they believed was involved. And so they got their confession. But I was surprised to find out, because I really thought there was more physical evidence, because I knew about the searches in Virginia, but I just didn't know what they'd found. And so I'm thinking, okay, they're going to have something to back up his confession with. And I was surprised to find out that they did not. So I was like, interesting. So I learn things when I do these shows myself about cases which I hadn't looked into deeply enough. And now I know more about the Lyon sisters. So anyway, the answer to that is 100% no. No. I'm dead set against psychics having anything to do with any crime cases. It pisses me off, and I wish that the ones who say they can solve cases, I would like to do a blind test with them and prove that they cannot. But they apparently have never accepted that challenge. So, but I'd love to see them do that. I mean, I could pick some cases which I know the answer, they've been solved, and I could see if they could solve them without me feeding them all the information or them being able to go on the internet and find it all out. If they were really psychic, they could do that without some help, shall we say. Or what most of them are just doing bad guesswork. Okay, that's what it comes down to. Some of them are doing what a profiler would do. Look at the evidence that exists and come up with their own guesses. With me, when I do that, I say, I've analyzed the evidence, here's my analysis. They go, well, they decide whether they're going to believe me or not, whether I'm a good profiler or not. When a psychic says it, they're not analyzing evidence, are they? They're just getting it from beyond. And therefore, how do you fight that? How do you say you didn't get it from beyond when they're saying they did? So yes, most of the time, every psychic that's ever contacted me has been completely 100% useless and a pain in the ass. So, and I stand by that. So you want to believe you're a psychic. You want to reach out to the spiritual world. You want to meditate and get answers from the universe. I have no problem with that. Just keep out of crime. That's all I say. Make it a personal thing for you and your own spiritualness. Stick with that. Stay away from the police. Pat and the Psychopathic Psychic. That's a show I'd like to see. I'm gonna go bent out of shape about that. So anyway, thank you for being here again. I'll see you this week. I think it's a 3:00 show this week for the Hangout, but I'm on the wrong week because I'm supposed to watch my granddaughter on Wednesday, which is when so I may be screwed up. I may have to do another 7:00 show this week and go back to 3:00 next week. So if you're from the UK or Europe, my apologies if I have to change up because somehow I ended up on the wrong week. The reason I have the cleaning ladies come on Thursday, and I need them. They come every other Thursday, so I can't do a 3:00 show because I never know when they're going to show up. So I always try to do a 7:00 show on that week. And sometimes I have to watch my granddaughter on Wednesday. So I try to mix it all in. And so I think I screwed up the week somehow. So I may have to fix it. So we'll see what happens. But, oh, aren't you nice? That's very sweet of you. And so that's a what? I have a pole in my house. What am I swinging around it? A very small house. I don't think that would fit. Anyway, I'm glad you were all here. And again, if you're new to the channel, please do like, subscribe, and keep an educational channel. Educational and not gossipy. I try to avoid that as much as possible, and therefore I stick to education. So thank you for being here, and I will see some of you on Wednesday or Thursday. Bye.